We'll call the Carlisle Village Council meeting to order. Would everyone please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Bicknell? Mr. Jewett?
Here.
Mr. McEldowney?
Here.
Mr. McIntosh?
Here.
Ms. Tankersley? Here. Mr. Humphries?
Here.
Mayor Winkler?
Here. Before you are the minutes of the regular meeting of December the 12th, but before we read those, do we have a motion to suspend the reading of the minutes by the clerk?
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. McEldowney?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes. The regular meeting minutes, December the 12th. Is there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adopt?
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McEldowney?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Abstain.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes. Regular minutes have been adopted. Also, we have the regular meeting minutes for the second meeting of, which was also on December the 12th. Is there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, we have a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Ms. Tankersley, we have a second.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McEldowney?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Abstain.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes. Regular minutes of their second meeting have been adopted as well. Next on our agenda is a public forum. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address council this evening? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Roger Britton, 280 Welcome Way. I just wanted to thank you guys for jumping on this thing right away and continue. I guess we're going to work it, punch it on through on this camper and these ordinance problems. So keep up the good work and let's get it solved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, we don't have a work session on tonight, Mr. Britton. Was you aware of that we're not, we don't?
I wasn't aware, but that's okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. Public forum is still open if anyone else would like to address council. Just state your name and address, please, for the record.
Chet Miles, 621 Meadowview Court. I'd like to congratulate all the city council members and their seats for 2018. Looks like we've got a good council to start out the 18th. Now it looks like it's time to go to work. And Carlisle's and take the city from, which is a great place to, or a good place to live, to a great place to live. I mean, we're always good for improvements, every year. So, I mean, let's see if we can make it even better this year than we have. I mean, you've got a good, solid council. It looks like you've got experience now. You don't have anybody that's really underexperienced on the council, so it looks like you should be able to do a good job. Since this is the first meeting of the year, it would be a great time to see what everybody's agenda is for the year and what each one is looking forward as far as the city and the village, or the city and the community, is what we're going to do for the city and the community. I've got a few kind of suggestions that's come along, and through my examples, I'll give you some examples as economic development is one. This is a great source of income for the city, and also to make to help the city grow, and also will also keep us from trying to raise taxes. If we can get economic development, that's our main source of income for the city, and if we can get that under control, we shouldn't have to be raising taxes, which would keep the people of city of Carlisle happy. I got a few things also. There's the police department we need to work on, and I think, Mayor, you're kind of one that is, I think 7, as we finally finished up last year, is kind of the magic number that we need to have to keep 2 people on shift all the time.
I'm not sure if 7's the magic number or not. I guess the chief is here tonight. I don't know if he has that information, but personally, I would like to be able to see us have 2 officers per shift on the
Right.
streets.
8 would work a lot better. 7 you could get by. I've put the pencil to it a couple times, but 8 would be really great because you're going to have someone sick or whatever. And especially now that drugs are becoming very epidemic. And also now we've got an HIV epidemic, believe it or not, that's going through. Cincinnati is in a big problem with this now, and it's working this way. So, and it's from the dirty needles from drugs. So it's all still back to related to drugs. So we definitely need to take a look at the police force if all possible. But we got to get economic development first before we can really do anything on it. Fire department, we can always improve on that. Streets and maintenance, need to take maybe a look at that. There's a couple of streets that look like they definitely need some repairs in the city. I mean, it's nothing that's earth-shaking, but if we do get into where we have some extra income, there is a few of them. And actually, we've got some over in Eagle Ridge that are kind of separating. They got the thumps and everything else in them. So I don't know where we're sitting on our TIF fund or anything, but maybe we might take a look at it and see if we can come up with anything. But we do have some over there. Maybe take a look at our comprehensive plan, which we've found out from the RVs and everything else that we're kind of a little backwards on that. So maybe there's other things that we might want to take a look at through the year, to check and see if we're not antiquated in some of those, and maybe see if we can't bring some of that back up to rank, because it's a changing world all the time. Look at your cell phones. You buy them one day, the next day they're obsolete. So, I mean, we have to kind of stay intact with that as well, and see what we can do with on the comprehensive plan, and get that going, and kind of maybe review some of it, maybe a little bit at a time or something. Other than that, I wish all of you a great year for 2018, and let's all work together and see if we can make it a great year. And I sure thank all of you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Public forum is still open. If anyone else would like to address council? Seeing none, we'll close the public forum. We'll move on to council reports. Mr. Bicknell, would you like to start off this evening?
Just wanted to hope everybody had a good New Year's, upcoming New Year's. Welcome everybody back to start a new season, new year. Look forward to the new things we have coming, new things we'll work on to improve what we need to improve, and that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jewett?
I want to thank the ones that came tonight, in light of the fact that we're not having a work session tonight, but this dear gentleman here thought I was going to been preaching somewhere and wanted to know if I'd pass the plates. Maybe we'll pass the plates in lieu of raising taxes tonight. I thank Quentin for not bringing his camera tonight, so you'll see me in a suit the next time as well. But I just wanted to thank all of you for coming tonight, and as we work through the RV and the other issues, by all means, once we get through those issues, please don't stop coming, because we enjoy having the citizens here at our meetings. And that's all I have this evening.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McEldowney?
Thank you to Mr. Britton, Mr. Miles, as well as the rest of you that have been in attendance recently. We do appreciate your input, and we hope to continue that moving forward. As Mr. Miles stated, there's many good things in Carlisle, and we can continue to move forward. One of my goals, personally, that I had planned to speak on, even before you came to the podium, Mr. Miles. A personal goal of mine is to continue to increase community outreach into the 2018 year. We have a great staff here, and I think we can continue to build on that through our council, as well as through our village staff, working with the community members, as well as other municipalities around the area. You know, as I've said before, we become stronger by working together, and I really believe that. Also, as Mr. Miles stated, another point that I was going to mention was looking at our comprehensive plan, and as a council, hopefully pinpoint some items that we hope to accomplish in 2018 and moving forward beyond that. And I think a great time for that would be to start looking at that at our retreat. We don't have one scheduled at this point in time, but I'm sure we will have one scheduled this late winter. And that is all this evening.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McIntosh?
First off, welcome to Mr. Humphreys. Second off, thank you to the road crews. And we had weather for a change this past week. I drive through 4 or 5 different municipalities on my way to work. Carlisle's roads were in very good shape in the morning, so I appreciate their hard work and what they do with the little manpower and resources they have. I just want to give them a thank you. Number 3, Mr. McEldowney stole my retreat plug. If everyone could please pinpoint some dates, let's try to knock that out sooner rather than later, and get some ideas and goals for 2018. Which Mr. Miles brought up leads into that, goals for 2018. I think we all kind of have the same goals every year. For me, the first one is maintain. I think the quality of life in Carlisle is very high. I think we all enjoy living here. And we've had a lot of turnover over the past few years with department heads, and I feel like we have very good department heads right now. So I want to maintain that, maintain the quality of life before we try to change anything. Second goal is always keeping the police department solid. Right now, we're okay. We've identified the potential need for future funds, which we'll address when we get there, but I would like to even see us add personnel to the police department, even though we have trouble filling the roles we have right now approved. That's always a goal of mine. Economic development is always a goal. We've been very close on a couple deals over the past few years. I feel like we're right there on the brink of a nice economic development in the business park. So we'll keep plugging along with that. And a personal goal of mine is the parks. The parks have been stagnant for a couple of years now. So I would really like to see some life back in the parks. I've talked to a few other municipalities about partnering up on a couple projects, but we can't do it without a park board, which we currently do not have. So here's my plug for park board members. Anyone interested, please contact Town Hall. We need a park board before we can do anything. Other than that, I would like to ask council to consider having a work session on the 23rd, if we do not have any other work sessions or heavy agenda for that meeting. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Tankersley?
The guys have said a lot of things that I was going to say. I ditto a lot of what they said, especially about our staff now. I think we have a great staff, village staff. And I also wanted to let the people of Carlisle know that I am here for you. So I'm approachable. Please don't hesitate if you have questions for me to bring to council. And I want to thank everyone who's come to the meetings. That does mean a lot. That's it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Humphreys?
Thank you. First thing I would like to thank those that took the time to circle the dot next to my name this past November 7th. That day, there were those that voted for me, those that didn't vote at all, those that voted for others, and those that voted against. The one common denominator is that all of those people are my constituents, that I take this position very serious. I have a goal of trying to work well with others. I think we do have a good, well-diversified staff of council and workers and department heads. I can't wait to move forward with the thoughts and the bit of information I remember from doing this for 6 years myself. Secondly, I would like to acknowledge that 30 years ago today, well, this meeting, Sharon L. Bird was the first and only female to ever be the mayor of Carlisle. And her 4 years actually started 30 years ago this meeting, so I'd like to acknowledge her. She was a good friend and a neighbor and a mentor. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll close council report and move on to mayor's report. Also, I'd like to welcome Mr. Humphreys and all the other council members that were elected back this for their new term. Excited to get going. One of the comments I wanted to make to Mr. Miles is, you know, we all work hard toward economic development. It's not something that's easy to get here. One of the things I would like to just bring up, I don't know how we can do it. I don't have all the information in front of me now, but we've also had two restaurants that wanted to locate here in town. And because of the not being able to sell alcohol is why they chose not to come here. And back in the early 70s, there was a referendum put on the ballot. And at that time, the citizens voted to not be able to sell spirituous liquor by the glass. In talking to some of these restaurant owners, they say the three things that keep them in business and keep the doors open is the three things they push the most when you go into one, and it's the appetizers, it's the drinks, and it's the desserts at the end of the meal. And if you look at the prices on those, that's what keeps the doors open. They weren't wanting to start bars, but they were wanting to be a full-service restaurant, just like if you go to O'Charlie's or Red Lobster or any of those other places. So until someone takes the initiative to maybe pass a petition in town to get that back on the ballot, we probably won't see a restaurant, because that's the reason that a lot of them won't come here. So just kind of put that out there in case anyone's interested and wanting to step forward to try to help us with that issue. But we all want to see our community prosper. We don't like to ask for tax increases because we all sitting here pay those increases as well as you. And we want to be very conservative with the money, the tax money that we do have. We want our community to be safe in all aspects of fire, EMS, and police. So we work hard and we appreciate your support. We appreciate seeing you in the audience coming to offer advice to help us with our decisions. So, and thank you all for coming this evening. Yes?
Mr. Mayor, I will head that committee up. I think as you and I, when the first meeting I came to, we talked about this, and it's been kind of your pet peeve and my pet peeve from the very beginning. And I think that we tried it one time and found out that if we opened it up to everything. So I guess we all kind of stepped aside, but I still think that it's one of the things we definitely need as a restaurant in town. And first thing is you're bringing economic development in, where are you going to take them out to lunch or anything else? You're going to have to go to one of the other cities to do it, instead of keeping them in town and impressing them what good is, you know, the good we have in Carlisle. So I definitely would help you on trying to get that through.
It's not that I'm advocating that we start allowing bars in town. That's not what I'm advocating at all. But in order from what I'm being told by the restaurant owners, in order for them to be able to keep the doors open, that's one of the tools that they need in order to be able to do that.
And I don't think it'd be a religious attitude, because I know a lot of people that go to church on Sunday and they go to, you know, to different restaurants, which does serve alcohol, and they patronize them. So I don't see where it's going to be a big problem here.
Okay. Well, thank you all again for coming this evening. That's all I have in the mayor's report, so I'll close the mayor's report and move on to manager's report.
Thank you. I don't really have much tonight. My favorite topic is, Mr. McIntosh's is park board. Mine lately has been about the railroad crossings. We have not yet heard when they're gonna be in town. I reached out to them, around the holidays when they were supposed to be in. I have not heard any updates. I'm sure the weather has modified their plans, but they are still coming. I don't have an idea when. As soon as we know anything official, we will definitely spread the word out through our Facebook page, our website, as well as through the meetings itself. I just wanted to just clarify, Mr. McIntosh has requested a work session on the 23rd.
Go ahead, sorry.
Of January, is it 23rd?
Yeah.
Okay. As of now, I don't anticipate it being a agenda-heavy meeting. So I don't know if you want to go ahead and decide if you'd like to have a work session, as well as what topics would be discussed, so we could advertise it appropriately.
The zoning is the only reason I asked.
Okay.
Yeah.
To continue the specific topic of RVs and campers, or are we going to expand the topic for now?
I say we wrap up that part first.
Okay.
I agree.
Along those lines, what is Facebook, the Carlisle Facebook, the best avenue for them to check and make sure that that is going to be a work session topic for that night?
We will post on the Facebook and this, however.
The agenda gets posted on our website. Yeah.
Y'all check that out so you don't have to enjoy too much boredom.
So typically, the Friday before a council meeting is when we solidify the agenda for the following Tuesday meeting on the website for the public notice as well, send it out to the press. And if there's any modification to the agenda between, then it's revised through the website as our primary form of communication. And that is all I have.
Okay, thank you. We'll close the manager's report. We have no committee reports or old business this evening. We'll move on to new business. Reorganization of council committees and citizen boards and commissions. Probably the first thing we want to start off with the deputy mayor. Mr. Licklider was our deputy mayor, who's no longer with us. He resigned. Start off with the deputy mayor. Does anyone have a nomination or a motion to make for deputy mayor?
I'll make a motion that Mr. Jonathan McEldowney be nominated as vice mayor.
Vice mayor? We have a nomination of Mr. McEldowney. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. McIntosh? Roll call?
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McEldowney?
Abstain.
Mr. Humphries?
Abstain.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes. Congratulations, Mr. McEldowney.
Thank you.
I guess we'll move on here to, I guess the first committee here is the economic development. And last year, that was Mr. McEldowney, myself, and we had a vacant seat there.
I believe all the vacants were Mr. Licklider's former spots.
Oh, okay, so. Does anyone have any interest in economic development?
I'd be interested.
I will continue on there as well.
I'm fine continuing in that seat.
Okay. Finance and legal, myself, Mr. McIntosh was on there, Mr. Licklider was there, who's now gone. Any interest?
It's a lot of fun.
Somebody throw your hat in the ring, you're gonna be here anyway.
I will.
Mr. Bicknell? Lands and Streets,
May I ask a question? Just, I'm not,
Sure.
I haven't gone through this process before. So each committee has members and they have a chairperson. Is the chairperson chosen at this point in time, or is it when the?
Normally, yes.
So with Mr. Licklider having been formally the chairperson of the Finance Committee, does that need to be officially recognized, who the chairperson would be?
Mr. McEldowney was the chair of the Economic Development,
So he'll,
Yeah.
continue to be the chair. Finance was Mr. Licklider.
So now Mr. Bickler said he wants to be on it. Just to clarify, is he proposing to also be the chair of it? Just
Not
Clarification.
necessarily. I mean, Mr. McIntosh, would you want to chair the Finance Committee
I will, I mean,
since you've been there?
I would love to.
Okay. Lands and Streets, Mr. Jewett was the chair. Myself and Mrs. Tankersley was there on that committee.
I will be glad to continue.
I'll continue, yes.
Unless someone wants
Yeah,
to be
unless
on there,
someone
I'll
else wants to.
continue. Public Safety, chair is Mr. Bicknell. Members were myself and Mrs. Tankersley. Anyone else be interested in public safety?
Mr. Humphries, hop in on one of these wherever you feel wanted.
Hey, you want to nominate me for something, I'd be more than welcome to.
I'd like to see Mr. Humphries get involved somewhere, so if Will has taken into the finance and legal, if Mr. Humphries wants to go into the public safety, I would like to nominate him. If that's okay with everyone else.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I'm fine with that.
For public safety? Is that, that's what you,
Yes. Now, as a member, we can do the chair would be whoever. I don't have a problem with whoever on that one.
I'll tell you, I'll step down and let Mr. Humphries have the public safety. Because I think I'm on every committee.
So that would be
So leave
Mr.
Mr.
Bicknell as chair, Tim Humphries, and Barb Tankersley as members?
Yes.
Okay.
Utilities Committee, I'm the chair, Mrs. Tankersley is a member, and we have a vacancy. Mr. Licklider, I guess, was there.
What is the Utilities Commission?
Yes, what is it?
It's when we meet to talk about street lights and any utilities such as in the community. Mostly, that's,
I know, just from my own personal experience, when a couple of years ago, we did a major look at the rate structure and the billing process for our utilities or sewer water, and that worked its way, starting with the Utilities Committee, and then upwards to council, so I know anything related to our sewer and
Utility.
water and changes went through that, just because happened to be involved in that.
anyone have an interest?
I'd be interested in that.
And we can approve all these by motion at the end, correct?
Yes. Area Progress Council of Warren County. Mr. McEldowney was the council member, Mr. Bicknell was the alternate.
I'm fine staying there, so I try to attend their events when it fits into my schedule as well, so.
Okay. Mr. Bicknell, you fine with staying there, or do you want to nominate someone, or if someone wants to step up?
I'm fine with staying.
Okay. Fire Department, Fireman's Dependent Fund Board. It's a one-year term. Mr. Bicknell was on that board. Mr. Chief Holbrook, who I think wants to continue on that board,
I believe this
Yes,
board
both
is
Holbrook and Hurley.
And Hurley.
it's typically 2 council member, 2 staff representatives from the fire department, and then a citizen makes up that board.
So we have a vacancy there with a citizen and a council member. Am I reading it correctly?
Looks like Mr. Richardson, his term is up because they are 1-year terms, and I believe
We-
I've not
we-
heard anything back
we
from
We've
him.
not.
sent out communication to see if he would like to continue, and he's not responded.
Any,
This will be a board that, in my understanding, is state mandated, and only meets if there is a need. And my personal history with Carlisle, it's never met. It's my understanding that it meets if there would be a tragic accident that would involve the loss of the life of a fire department. We do contribute financially to the state's dependency fund that has money in case there would be an accident, and it would be allow the family to have some access to some funds. And so in order to disperse those funds, the board would have to meet to go through a chain of protocol. So this is a board that, we hopefully never does have to meet.
I would be interested in being on it if we need another council member.
I think you'd be served very well, Barb.
okay, Housing Reinvestment Board, Area 1, 3-year term. Mrs. Tankersley is currently on that board, with Mr. McIntosh, Mrs. Duffy, Mr. Casson. There was a planning committee appointee, I guess, on there, Mr. Ron Hood, which I don't think will be accepting that position, so we'll have a vacancy there. And we have 2 vacancies for residents.
I believe this is a special board
Meets once a year.
that they have to live within the reinvestment area, which I
Yes.
believe is around basically the business park area. There's a certain geographical,
Think down on
Area.
Crescent Lane, that
Crescent.
area.
Yeah.
so we'll clarify what those specific boundaries are for the residence requirement. Council people could be any member of council.
Okay. Jim's board, Mr. Bicknell just started on that. I'm assuming you want to continue? Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission meets the first Thursday. Mr. Bicknell is currently the elected official, and Mrs. Duffy is the administrator that's there.
This board requires that the primary member of MVRPC be an elected official. A lot of our county boards does not have that requirement. This one does. Mr. Bicknell is our official elected representative. The meetings are typically held during the business working day. So usually the alternate member is a staff person that primarily attends on our behalf. In the past, that role has been the village manager. I would like to suggest to council that I be removed from this, and my finance director, Mr. Ryan Rushing, being placed on this. He has a personal background in zoning. Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission is more about area, Miami Valley, general transportation issues. A lot of issues regarding 35 and 75. It's not zoning as we think of zoning here locally. It's more geographical. We have been able to acquire various financial grants through them to do a road project. The Chautauqua Road, Dayton-Oxford Road project is one that we've been able to work through the Imagine agencies. There's always been a financial component interest from them that I've always, as finance director, was heavily involved in. Mr. Rushing is a resident of Beaver Creek, was on their zoning board in the past, and does have a personal relationship with many of the members that are on the MVRPC. So he is actually much more knowledgeable about their role than I currently am. So that's my rationale between the financial aspect that we use them for monies to improve the road, that would fall into his bailiwick, as well as his own personal interest. He actually is rather excited to be on this board to serve us.
I would be,
I don't know.
I would be okay with that. Sounds like a good person.
Yeah, I think he does a great job as our finance director, and I would support him.
Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission Tech Advisory. Currently, Dan Casson, our employee, is serving in that position with the alternate being Julie Duffy.
The tech advisory meets once a month prior to the regional board meet. While Mr. Casson was on his temporary retirement, I was actually attending both the tech advisory and the regular meeting. The tech advisory serves as sort of the level one of any changes or ideas approach. So they work it through the tech advisory for them to bless it, kind of like a commission would be, and then the regional planning commission would be like the council that would ultimately bless the proposals. So between Mr. Cass and myself, we would have knowledge of upcoming requests and grant opportunities at the tech level, with the board actually ultimately having a vote on it.
Is this something that Mr. Riley can attend with Mr. Casson?
He would need to officially be on it, so if we would like to replace Mr. Casson with Mr. Riley, it would either be the member or the alternate who would need to attend the meetings. Mr. Casson has been, prior to Mr. Casson doing it, Mr. Wallace served that role for us. Since Mr. Wallace's retirement, Mr. Casson was the one to step into that role, so he has been going for close to 2 years now to that board and is willing to continue on, but
That's fine, I was just curious if he could tag along.
he could always attend as a audience member,
That's true.
as a tag along.
Might be a good idea for him to do that in the future. National League of Cities voting delegate. Currently, myself is the elected official and Randall Jewett is the alternate. I mean, that's something that I never hear from them really. It's nothing that I never or ever attend, so I'm okay with staying there unless someone else would want that. Mr. Humphreys, you interested in that?
I did attend a lot of the National League of Cities back, several years ago, but I'm not quite sure what my schedule's gonna be like this year coming up, so.
I mean, I've went one time in the years that I've been here, and I've never went
Makes me
back.
no mind. That's up to you, sir.
I'll pencil you in.
Okay, thank you.
And if he really misses it, he can pencil his name in on mine.
Let's see,
Is there anything else on this page?
pardon?
I think the green ones are the council ones.
Yeah. I think that's all we need on there, isn't it? Planning Commission. Mr. McEldowney currently serves on the council member on the Planning Commission, and we have a vacancy there to replace Mr. Licklider,
I'd like to join that.
Mr. McNell.
And he was on it prior, so.
I was on prior to
Okay.
the Citizen, and I had to be removed from the Citizen, and I got a prime seat.
Tax Incentive Review Enterprise Zone. Mr. McIntosh and Ms. Duffy is currently in those positions.
That's my favorite committee, I'd like to stay.
Okay. I knew you would step up. Volunteer Police Dependents Board. Currently, it's Mr. Bicknell, Chief Bruck, Jeff Piper. And we have a council vacancy there for someone. And we also need a resident for that position.
This board is very similar to the fire dependency board. It only meets if there would be a tragedy within the police department on duty and would need to go through the process to request dispersal of funds.
I'd be glad to fill in there, Mayor.
Okay. So we still need to get a resident to fill in. Warren County Health District Advisory Council. Currently, it's Mr. Bicknell as the elected official and Mr. McEldowney as the alternate. Is that daytime meetings?
It's usually an evening once a year, usually in the spring, if I recall correctly.
Okay,
Mr. Fryman was there in the past, and he would normally attend.
okay. You guys okay with that board, or is someone else interested?
I'm fine, and if Mr. Bignell wants to flip-flop, we can, or if he wants to attend.
You will flip flop with them.
Okay.
Either way, if you're comfortable with this one.
Okay, I'm fine.
So you reversing roles there?
Yeah, I'll take the alternate. I'll take the elected official.
Warren County Municipal League. Currently, I am the member and Mrs. Tankersley is the alternate. I would like to continue in that role since I've been asked to be the president of the Municipal League this year, so until they actually vote it in, it's not official, but I'd like to stay there. Mrs. Tankersley, are you okay, or you?
I'm fine staying there unless someone else wants it.
Okay.
I don't.
Warren-
You usually attend the dinner meetings,
Yeah,
right?
I try to go
I
to as
think-
many as I can.
I think that's appropriate.
Warren County Regional Planning Commission, Mr. Casson, Mrs. Duffy, and myself is currently on there.
I believe, and it's just the way we have it on this paper, it might be a little confusing.
Yeah,
There are two Warren County Regional Planning Commission aspects of it, similar to Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission. There is a general board that meets quarterly. Mr. Casson is our representative to that, and I'm his alternate for the quarterly meetings. Every month, the executive board meets that I attend. Warren County Regional Planning Commission is more like our zoning. They do authorize the zoning and improvements for county and township activities throughout Warren County, whereas Miami Valley is more just about global transportation. This is about subdivision development and regulations and granting approvals. It's very much heavy zoning related by Warren County standards. So I believe this is really two different groups. So it may not, at least from how we're acting, is that the quarterly meeting of the general board, Mr. Casson's our rep, and I am his backup, and the monthly meeting of the executive board, I attend, and I believe the mayor is the backup. So
Okay.
the second Mr. Casson, I believe, really should be me.
that's a little confusing there.
So we have the quarterly general board of currently Mr. Casson and myself, and then the executive board is myself and you. And this board does not require that the official member be an elected official. It just has to be someone from our municipality. So any of these positions could be staff or elected.
We'll just, I guess we'll leave those the same unless,
Yeah, so I'm just proposing to officially flip-flop, or to remove Dan as,
Yeah.
and myself, because,
okay.
just to clean that up.
Wastewater Board, Mark Riley, I'm assuming you want him to continue there?
That might be it.
I think that's it.
So these two on the last page, these are old. I mean, do we have to keep these as a,
We have just kept them as a historical record of
Okay.
who's been, I know when we had our charter review commission, we referred back to
okay.
who was on it to see, as a starting point, reaching out. But they're not an active board, it's just historical purposes.
So we don't have to necessarily remove Mr. Bicknell, is what you're
No.
saying? Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I could, I'd like to acknowledge under organizations on what we've been page 2, City Historian. Chuck Thompson no longer lives in Carlisle, nor would he be able to provide that availability. So,
Okay, I did not know. I was kind of going by the highlighted.
right, I just wanted to at least bring that to the attention, please.
We'll have to try to find another city historian.
Well, I don't, you guys would probably be way more familiar than I am. I don't know that this is a position that's required by our charter
Okay.
or anything. I think it's just something that we've had. I'm not personally sure what Mr. Thompson's role was. If it is something that is required to be filled, but if there's a vacancy and council wishes to fill it, they could.
We could probably,
I have someone who would, I think would be good on that, if he would do it, would be Jim Gross. He knows so much about this village.
yeah, I was going to say also maybe someone from the Historical Society,
That's true, too, yeah.
so whichever. I guess he could become a member of Historical Society and then fill that role.
Yeah.
He is a lifetime member,
Is he?
yes.
Do any members of council know what Mr. Thompson's contributions in the past have been? I mean, I don't know that I've ever,
I mean,
met
I'm
with
the
him,
past
but when-
president of and I don't remember ever there being an opportunity for him to play a role other than on paper.
I'm just curious.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adopt the appointees for 2018 council committees, commissions, and appointments?
So moved.
Mr. McEldowney? Mr. Bicknell? Roll call?
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McEldowney?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes,
Mr. Humphries?
Yes,
Mayor Winkler?
Yes. So our 2018 council and committee appointments have been adopted. Next is our citizens who have stated that they would like to continue on different boards and committees. We'll read those off and one at a time here, and then we can vote on them all at once, I guess. Let's see here. Mrs. Tankersley, are you wanting to serve on the Parks?
well, apparently I can't, from what
Yeah,
she said, yeah. I
yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah,
So, yep, so just nix that.
okay, all right, we'll just,
Thanks anyway.
Yeah, I didn't. I do now.
Mr. Thomas Volpe is interested in continuing to serve on the Carlisle Planning Commission vacancy, or interested on the vacancy?
He was
Yeah.
And
Yeah, he's
he
not
was
currently
here.
a member. He's
He's
asked
not
to be.
currently a member, but he wants to be on there. We have a vacancy, correct?
Currently have one vacancy. There's a
Yes.
possibility we may have a second.
Yes,
But we do have one active vacancy.
okay. Any discussion?
I say I'd like to nominate Mr. Volpe for that planning commission.
Okay. We have a second?
Yes, second.
Okay. We'll do the roll call at the end, I suppose. I get-
However you want to do it.
We'll go ahead and do the roll call now.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McEldowney?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yep.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes,
Mr. Humphries?
yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes. Congratulations, Mr. Volpe, and thank you for stepping up. This is from Mr. Chief Joel Holbrook, who wants to remain on the
Fire dependency board.
Fire Dependency Board. We have a motion to appoint Mr. Holbrook to the Fire Dependency Board.
So moved.
Mr. Bicknell
Second.
and Mr. Jewett. Roll call.
Mr. Bicknell.
Yes.
Mr. Jewett.
Yes.
Mr. McElDowney.
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh.
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley. Yes. Mr. Humphries.
Yes.
Mayor Winkler.
Yes. Mr. Holbrook is appointed to the Fire Dependency Board. Chief Mike Brook would like to be appointed to the Volunteer Police Dependence Board. We have a motion.
So moved.
Brooke and
Or
our
Mr. Brook
and our reservist,
and Jeff Piper, our
continue.
reservist. So there's two on here.
I make a motion for both of those.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bicknell.
Yes.
Mr. Jewett.
Yes.
Mr. McElDowney.
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh.
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley.
Yes.
Mr. Humphries.
Yes.
Mayor Winkler.
Yes. So Chief Brook and Jeff Piper is on the Volunteer Police Dependence Board. Miss Claudia Tufts for the Carlisle Parks and Recreation Board. She currently serves there and wants to continue. Motion to appoint Ms. Tufts.
So moved.
Ms. Tankersley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. McElDowney. Roll call.
Mr. Bicknell.
Yes.
Mr. Jewett.
Yes.
Mr. McElDowney.
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh.
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley.
Yes.
Mr. Humphries.
Yes.
Mayor Winkler.
Yes. Mrs. Tufts is appointed back to the Carlisle Parks and Recreation Board. And hopefully we can get you some more members and get rolling with that board. Mr. Jerry Ellender, we'll do two of them here. Mr. William Boyle is both interested in continuing on the Tax Review Board. We have a motion to appoint Mr. Boyle and Mr. Ellender to the Tax Review Board.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
Mr.
ahead.
Jewett. Roll call.
Mr. Bicknell.
Yes.
Mr. Jewett.
Yes.
Mr. McElDowney.
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh.
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley.
Yes.
Mr. Humphries.
Yes.
Mayor Winkler.
Yes. Mr. Boyle and Mr. Ellender, thank you for being on the Tax Review Board. Okay. We have Mr. Thompson, Mr. Randall Thompson, who is no longer interested in continuing on the Property Maintenance Review Board.
His seat was up, so.
Yes. So we need to accept Mr.,
No, his term was up.
his term was up, so
He
he's
did
no
not
longer
continue.
interested. Okay. Mr. Richardson, his term was up also,
Correct.
so he has not indicated that he's interested in this either. So I guess that's all we have for the reorganization.
So what we'll do is we'll update this and update the council vacancies, those who have responded with their term and those who have re-upped. That way to give council an update on the website, the open positions for residents to serve.
Okay. So we'll move on to first readings of ordinance and resolutions. Resolution 118, resolution authorizing the manager to enter into an agreement with the Miami Valley Regional Crime Lab, and this is on for an emergency. Would you like to talk about the emergency?
Yeah, we have been a member of the Miami Valley Regional Crime Lab since I've been here. In the past, it has just been a membership that we belong to. This year, they have actually asked us to make it more formal and sign a contractual agreement with them, just to explain the services that they are currently doing for us. So since it is a contractual agreement, that's why I'm bringing it to you for council to allow me to enter into that agreement. Reading over the agreement does not appear to be any different than our normal operations that we have with them in the past. They do process all of our data. Chief Bruck is here to offer, answer any questions that you have or can offer his opinion on it. He has expressed to me, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but he is definitely interested in continuing that relationship with them. Does cost the village money to belong to them, for them to process our data, forensics, crime. It is, the fee this year I had put into the resolution was $4,632. It looks like that might be about $40 less, so just under $4,600 to continue that relationship. The alternate for us would be to use of the state of Ohio, the BCI up in London, Ohio. We could transport our evidence up to them, and they would do their forensic evaluation and process it at no charge, but we would be in the queue with all the other state stuff that goes to them. So given our limited personnel to drive the hour up to London, Ohio and the hour back to maintain chain of custody of the evidence, and we do have an ongoing work relationship with Miami Valley Regional Crime Lab. That is primary reasons why we like to continue that in a formal relationship.
Has there been a charge in the past?
Yes, we have always paid a charge for them. The difference is now their commissioners have asked it to be more formal. The reason why it's on for an emergency is we would like to continue that relationship with presenting evidence to them as quickly as possible and not have to delay with the 3 readings in 30 days to do that this year.
And since there's been a charge in the past, this would have been
It's in the budget.
in the budget.
Correct.
Yes.
It is just, the cost this year over last year is about $400 greater than what we paid, so there is a slight increase.
Is this something they've asked across, like everybody they've worked with to sign a contractual agreement, or is it?
Yes, they've asked every jurisdiction that belongs to them to enter into a true contractual relationship with them, rather than just pay the annual dues and be done with it.
Any other discussion? May I have a motion to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings, have 1 reading by title only, and declaring an emergency?
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Ms. Tankersley, roll call.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McEldowney?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes.
A resolution authorizing the village manager to enter into an agreement with Miami Valley Regional Crime Laboratory for 2018 services and declaring an emergency.
Any further discussion? Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Mr. Bicknell,
Second.
Mr. Jewett, roll call.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. McEldowney?
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes. Resolution 118 has been adopted. We have no second or third readings this evening, no executive session or work sessions. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mr. Jewett,
Second.
Ms. Tankersley, roll call.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. McEldowney?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes, we are adjourned.